right, guys. I got Michele Coy. She is a leadership and business coach and strategist, and she comes highly recommended by a few good people that you've actually seen on this podcast who are actually using her for consulting. Michele, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Franklin.
Well, we're going to be getting into a bunch of things. Mainly, I asked you to come on and do a class on basic business finances, because when I'm consulting people, what I find is that this is seriously lacking. Just the basics, not a full-blown, MBA course, but on the basics of business finances and how they actually get their stuff in order, to be able to get that foundation to grow, because what I find is they don't have a foundation. So we're going to get into that. But before that, we also got an event that you're going to be at up in Michigan. Is this with Maria and a bunch of other people, which are going to be on next week? So we're going to be, getting that together. Tell me a little bit about that. What's going on there?
So that is going to be an event called Lead People, Manage Stuff, because you manage stuff, you don't manage people, you lead people. And so it's with Alan Fiore out of New Mexico.
Yeah, he's out of New Mexico.
Yep. Maria Sorrentino from Pest Pros of Michigan. We have a Lori, I don't know her last name, so I apologize, but she is going to help you go through employee retention. So the hiring and firing, the do's and don'ts of that process. Alan's going to be talking about some leadership principles. I am going to do a high level on the DISC personality tests and why that's important to understand the personalities of your employees, because that feeds into so many different levels of leading people. It goes into, the communication. How are you communicating with these people? And also it helps with your leadership as well. How do they want to be led based on their personalities?
Got it. All right. Awesome. No, that's like, this is what probably 98% of my audience needs. I don't know. They're going to be doing it from there. They're going to be doing that live also, or are they going to record that, or anything?
It's all going to be live.
Got it. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is that'll be for next week. If your guys are going to be up, I guess, in Michigan, and you want to get on a flight like now and be there next week for that, that's going to be Alan Fiore was just on actually I actually had to correct myself, because bro, how do you pronounce your name? I never know. It's Foyer. He says Foyer, it makes no sense to me. Everybody even my producer is like, how do you pronounce his name? Because it's kind of like it won't go well if I use fewer with a lot of people.
Yes.
So I said, he actually told me how his name is pronounced. It's Foyer, which but anybody who knows, he's done a lot in this community. Very well, very talented individual with a lot of experience. Do me a favor, just so the audience can get to know you.
Yes.
I mean, we've had conversations about what you went through to get where you are now, which was, pretty devastating. But, what's your background? Like, what did you do before you did consulting?
So I started way back when I was 16. So I started working in an accounting firm and worked in accounting and finance for small businesses for 32 years. And so I have been working in the small business area, and the last place I worked was a tribal government. So I spent 4.5 years in so basically governmental accounting, which is so different from the profit accounting, and spent my time there and just absolutely loved it. And that's where I learned that I really loved working with people. And I was not meant to be in a little office, printing checks for people. I like to educate them and help them get connected to the resources that they needed. And during that time, my boss basically said, we have a department for that. You don't need to be connecting people. And it took the airs out of my sales.
Wow.
And I just like, I'm no longer, this is not where my purpose is. And so I took a leap of faith. It'll be 6 years in 2 months from now. It'll be
Right.
6 years. I took that leap of faith and I sat on my couch for 6 months. I was burned out and I didn't even realize what burnout was, but that was burnout. And then my husband basically said to me, you signed up for this John Maxwell International Conference. If you don't get off the couch and go to that, you're going to have to go find a job. And I knew I could not work for someone else. Yeah. It was like my dad had always been an entrepreneur, and I just knew that was not an option. I was on this entrepreneur track, and I was going to make it happen. And so I didn't have my confidence to start doing the consulting work right away. So I started doing bookkeeping. It was my go-to. It's what I've been doing for 32 years. And so I just fell back into that accounting and bookkeeping. However, as I started working with small business owners, I started to realize there was something deeper to them than, a lot of people talk about. And that's really your mindset, and especially financial mindset. I was working with a lot of service-based businesses that didn't recognize the value they were providing for their customers and couldn't raise their prices because they were afraid they were going to lose clients. And when you realize it, the people that you lose were never your clients. They were the person looking for the cheapest deal. And so it was really understanding what their value was. So I went into money mindset coaching. And then from there, I stepped into the leadership coaching role. And I had a lot of training in leadership between Dale Carnegie and my resources with the Maxwell Leadership course. And what I really recognized was I struggled to step into that role. Because John Maxwell always says, leadership is responsibility. And for me, anytime I had responsibility, or actually anytime I had success, there was huge responsibility added to it. Get my driver's license, had to have a job, but I also became the family chauffeur. Got my accounting degree. My dad threw on additional responsibilities. He had not filed his taxes in several years and wanted his bookkeeping all caught up. And then he didn't want to pay me. He said, I paid for your college education. I shouldn't have to pay for this. And I'm thinking, I just spent 60 hours fixing your books so that you can get your taxes done, yet you don't see the value I offer. Right. And that was a huge blow. I had a bookkeeping business and I shut it down. I was like, why should I keep it? And then my dad passed away back in 2015, and it took me 7 years to clean up his estate. He had not filed his tax return in 7 years. He had 5 corporations that he opened and closed. And so it was learning all of those things that had happened for me in the past was actually leading me to where I am today, stepping into that leadership role, because I recognized they were happening for me because I had to go through them. I had to go through those challenges to recognize and step into the value that I truly bring to any organization. And so that's where my start and where it got me to today.
It's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm trying to absorb just what you said in the last, 8 minutes or 6 minutes that we were on this. It seems like it resonates with a lot of people that I talk to. The stepping into their role. Yes. You had entrepreneurial exposure from early on, and you talked about every time that you stepped up, it required more responsibility. And I feel that all the time, because a lot of it has to do also with not having to suffer from imposter syndrome,
Yes.
where you're not there yet, but you know what you have to do and you've been preparing yourself for it. And then you still feel like, I still feel today, I have no business doing this podcast. 10 years later, I still feel that even though I've beat all the odds, I've been in business 15 years, I've been profitable every single year, I'm in the top 10% of the money makers, I have beat the odds on going from a solo operator to a micro business where I employ 3 people. And that's a huge responsibility on me. I feel the weight, believe it or not, the weight I feel on me is more the responsibility I have for my people to make sure that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing to provide.
Yes.
That every week, every decision I make has a financial number attached to it. And when I screw up, I might have to let somebody go.
Absolutely. And you're also looking at, I remember sitting in a room of service-based business owners and listening to one of the owners talk about how they were unwilling to delegate and how they were burning themselves out. And I stopped that individual and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, by you not delegating, do you realize that the 17 employees that you have underneath you, you're affecting every one of their families because you're not taking care of yourself. And if you don't take care of yourself, how is your business going to survive?
Yep.
And that is right there is the number one thing that business owners don't recognize is they're unwilling to delegate those tasks that maybe they're not really good at doing, but they realize they have to do them to be in business.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what resources are out there to help them so that they can delegate?
Yeah. Or they in other words, here, every time that you grow, your business grows, it's going to demand a certain amount of growth from you. That you got to step out of this role that you were in that got you here. But now this new growth is demanding a leadership level from you that's higher. And they are unwilling to, like me, I'm right now building a team, and I realize that I do things and I micromanage them until I get those SOPs in place where I want it. And then, but I'm documenting every step of the way so that when I hand it off, it says, here is what I've recorded. And I actually do it on video. So here's how I'm doing it, because I'm delegating right now. We're trying to 10x our marketing and our media presence and all this. So I'm hiring people overseas. I'm hiring them overseas because I can get what I would pay here, $25, $35 an hour. I can get it for $6, $7 an hour.
Yes.
But it requires a lot of discipline on my part to document everything exactly how I want it, so that there is no ambiguity and there's no but I told you, I said. And then that's where the frustration of a lot of these people go, where everything is up here and they refuse to put it down on a step-by-step process, because that requires, I'm doing so many things and I don't have time to do this. And I realize if I don't make the time to do that, so I can step out of that, because I can't delegate an entire role. Like I realize that my chief job right now is sales and marketing. It's not bookkeeping. It's not tech work. It's not any of this. Is really my strong suit right now is sales and marketing. So therefore, I have to create the marketing program so that I can hand it off to different people, because I can't, it's like trying to find that person that can handle everything. It doesn't exist. So now I have 3 people now in that department. 2 of them are overseas. I have a web developer that I develop a relationship with. And I said, look, I need this done to the site. I'm not going to touch it. I know how to do it, but I'm not, just because I know how to do something doesn't mean I ought to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't mean that I enjoy it, and doesn't mean that I derive any energy from it. And I think
Yes.
understanding that about me, taking the 6 genius
Yes.
test, taking a lot of profiles of myself, because of says I always knew that, I just couldn't see it because I'm visual. See, I'm an
Yes.
audible and a visual person, and I'm kinesthetic. I don't do too much, and I can do data, so I'm kind of like a mix. And then I realized I needed to see that to say, this is where I am. This is where I get my most energy from. Yes, absolutely. It's teaching and training that I derive the most from. And just like you, and I said, but I said to myself, I will be danged if I'm going to jump back in a truck to do technical work. In other words, I shut that door and I said, I'm not going back to that. So now I got to do the hard work of always finding people.
Yes.
And that requires for the guy who, let's bring it down to the most fundamental level that you can do, is a guy who I see was a technician here. Nobody ever groomed him for management. He never became a service manager. He never did any management work. He was the lead tech. He was the best tech they had. Unfortunately, he hit a ceiling, and he's never going to make more. His only option was to jump and start up, because at 40, 50, you're not going to start a new career as a plumber and electrician.
Right.
So you jump from here to here. Now you're in this role of owner, and you have no idea what a P&L looks like. You have no idea what your numbers should be. You don't know what the chemical cost should be. You don't know what the route cost should be. You don't know what the fleet and you don't know what the employee cost should be. You don't know what a chart of account looks like. You're having to hire a bookkeeper, and your bookkeeper doesn't understand really your business. They're just putting stuff in categories. You don't know if they're in the right category. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, where am I financially? I don't know. I just know that I'm making $5,000 a month after a year,
Mm-hmm.
$8,000 a month, and I can barely take home not even 6% more than I used to when I was working for somebody else. And now you're like, dang, did I make a mistake? What people don't understand is that the average solopreneur never makes more than 6% of what he used to make when he was working for somebody else, because he's got to wear all these hats now.
Yes.
And so talk to me about, because we got the course coming out
Yes.
that we're putting out from you, that you can go and get it. If you go to Pestgeek Podcast, hit Academy, it'll be up tomorrow. You hit Academy and you go to the course, and you'll see Michele's course on basic business finance. I mean, she knows what she's talking about. She's done this all her life, folks. It isn't like she's a novice at this, decided to take a stab at it. I know I said a lot, but talk to me about all of that and what you're seeing and what you saw in your bookkeeping, and how do these people take that to the next level of where they need to be in every step of their business. And I know that you can't do that in a whole podcast, but kind of, when you said high level overview, we use that corporate term, high level overview.
Yes.
And what people think is that's everything they need to know. High level is you're looking at something from 50 feet in the air. Basically, it's an overview.
Yes.
Of that. And when I said, what do you mean when you say high? Because I use that term all the time. We're going to do a high level on this. And people are like, okay, he's going to give me the view of everything. And it's like, no, that's not what it means.
No.
Go through all that I did on the leadership and what you're finding and those things.
So one of the number one things I am seeing is people aren't using their financial statements to make decisions in their business because they don't understand how to read them or don't understand what actually needs to be in that financial statement. And so when you take the class, what I'm going to do is basically take you through what a chart of accounts is. This is your roadmap, because your chart of accounts are going to map to you what you find important that will go onto your financial statements. And then I break it down and help you understand how those chart of accounts are mapped to the various financial statements. So then I'm going to take you into that balance sheet and help you understand on a high level, this is your balance sheet. This is your snapshot of what you own, what you owe, and what's left over. So what you owe or what you own are your assets, your vehicles, your bank accounts, what people owe you if you have not collected at time of service. And then go down into what you owe. That would be your bank loans, your line of credit, your credit cards, your everyday expenses that you're working, all your vendors, suppliers. And then whatever's left over is your equity, or what's left after what you owe and what you own is subtracted. And then that goes into your profit and loss. So your profit and loss is your revenue. And how are you tracking that revenue? Sales is not going to give you a very good picture of what your business is represented. So I always recommend, I sit there and I talk with each person. I said, okay, tell me what you want to track. What's important to you to understand in your business? So then we break down those sales. Instead of it being one bucket, we break it into several buckets. And then from there, we go into cost of goods sold. A lot of people don't know about cost of goods sold. So often I just see it down in the expense area. Cost of goods sold is anything that is associated with any revenue you're generating. So this helps you understand what your labor costs are. What's it costing you to have that tech on the road? What is the cost of your chemicals? So your material costs. And then your job supplies. What are all those supplies, those little supplies that you may need? Some of those tools. If you're doing certain repairs, what other little tool or other supplies do you need? And then that will give you a gross profit or a gross income. And that will help you understand this is the income before my expenses, which your expenses are your advertising, your rent, the utilities, your insurances. And depending on what type of insurance, some people will put it under cost of goods sold if it's directly related to a vehicle. Other people keep it right down in expenses. Right. So it's just helping you understand where these numbers are coming from and how you can use these numbers to, make decisions such as, can I afford to buy that new piece of equipment? Can I afford to bring on another tech? What's it going to look like to bring on that tech? And then in the masterclass, I help bridge that profit and loss and that balance sheet, because what you make as a profit does not necessarily mean that's what you have in your bank account. And that's what a lot of business owners, that's a myth that a lot of business owners think. Well, I have this much. Well, you made this much. What's that bridge? And so then we go over the cash flow statement, which helps you understand the ins and outs of those balance sheet items and helps you understand, well, I had a loan. Why is that not considered profit and loss? Well, the only piece of that loan that goes on your profit and loss is that interest, because it's a liability, because you used an asset to create that liability. So you got the benefit of that asset in previous years. And so it's helping you just understand some of those key points. And then I'll give you a high overview of the importance of having a budget and what that budget can help you do on your decision making throughout the year.
Got it. No, I think that you fundamentally covered everything that when I get asked a question, everything, if you go into the Facebook groups, everybody throws around percentage figures, like how much should I spend on this? How much is an employee going to cost me? Well, people say, well, 20% of, you should pay them 20% or 18% or whatever of your, the ticket, whatever, the production. The problem is they don't factor in, are you going to need workman's comp? Are you going to need, what are the taxes on that employee? It's different in every state. Some states have 5 taxes. Other states have, 2 taxes. Some states, when I was in Ohio, I paid taxes on the city I worked in, and then I paid taxes on my income on the city I lived in. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And the county.
Yeah,
Ohio has county taxes.
So when you add all this up, what is the real cost of hiring that employee? Then we get into, well, how much are you making now? Well, I'm making $150,000 a year. I said, well, that's not nearly enough to hire unless you're going to take a huge pay cut. Because but what does it matter if I'm paying them a percentage? I said, but think about this. You're paying them a percentage of 150, that's 10,000 a month. That's 2,500 production a week. Take 20% of that. Who are you gonna find for the $2,500 a week production when he should be producing $1,500 a day?
Yeah.
They don't understand the correlation, those numbers. They throw out percentage, like, how much are you guys spending on advertising? Well, if you're a growing company, 10%. And if you're an established company, 6%. All right. So if he takes 10% and he's making 150, can he afford 10% of that cost when he's already needing an employee and he has no money to hire? He's in a catch-22.
Absolutely. And another thing is if you're not, which I don't go over, but I do offer anybody taking that class a 1-hour free consultation with me to just kind of do a high level overview of their own business. And one of the things that a lot of employee, owners don't recognize is job costing. What is it costing you to do that job? And one of the things they don't include is their own value. Yes. What is it? Well, I can make this amount of money. Well, I don't have an employee. Well, what
That's
if
your catch-22 right there?
Yeah. What if you were to hire an employee? What's that job costing you? Do you have it priced correct? Right. Based on the chemicals that you need? Are you considering how far away it is? The gas that you're putting in a vehicle? What's that vehicle costing you? Are you including all of those numbers in there?
That's the number. Usually that comes up, and it's like, in all my consulting, everybody is usually underpriced. It's not, and there's a difference between being underpriced and being a bottom feeder, because people confuse those two. What I find is that I ask them, okay, what is the average price in your market? Well, I got guys here doing it for $65. I said, that's not the question. I said, what is the average price in your market? Did you take the top 10, top 20 companies? Yeah, but I'm not competing with them because I'm a solo operator. You failed to understand that you have all those levels of management on you. You're the service tech, you're the salesperson, you're the service manager, you're the regional manager, you're the branch manager, you're the CEO, and you're wearing all these hats, and you're the marketing guy. And where are you going to get all the money to pay for all these hats later on? You don't have it because you underpriced it and you don't realize. So when I say go price out, go on Google, figure out who the top brands are, figure out what their pricing in that market is, and then go at least 10% above that. Because you're selling a personalized service, you should be able to get more. You're underpricing it. And what I find is they're usually under the price, thinking that if they go under their price, they're going to have more work. You're going to have more work. You won't have profit and you won't have a life.
Yes, because you won't have your ideal client.
Exactly.
Because
and they know who their ideal client is. They just don't do what it takes to keep them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's where the great customer service comes in.
Yes. And those guys have all the numbers figured out. You can't beat them on that. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it way longer than you, and they have it all figured out. What a lot of people think is that, oh, I'm going to reinvent the wheel here and do it better. I said, what you need to do is charge more and do it better. and do both. And that's where I think you mentioned the money mindset, where if they don't understand finances of the business, of what it really takes to run a business, their idea is every guy says, well, I could charge half of what my company used to charge because I thought they were ripping people off. Problem is they don't have all of that financial background to back it up to say, this is why they have to charge all this.
Absolutely. And even pricing as a solopreneur, are you in a building or are you out of your house? Because those are additional, fees that people don't recognize that, oh, well, I have a brick and mortar building. Well, you have to pay rent on that and you still have to cover those costs as well, versus having, working out of your home. It's still a value.
Yeah.
However, you have to factor those in. And that's what a lot of business owners don't do, is they don't recognize those different values that have to be contributed to that pricing.
No, I see it every single, I mean, I've done probably, where are we at in February? So I've done about 6-7 consultations on just preliminary, doing those high level overviews, just looking at their route density and analyzing their business, and they have no business driving an hour and a half for $159. What happens when that customer calls and complains? You don't have a route in that area. I mean, they're just going everywhere. This is why I'm hyper focused on creating a hyper local strategy. I was just I don't know if you know Pete Angel.
Yes.
Yeah, and we were just having a conversation yesterday. Was it yesterday? No, it was Monday. Yeah, no, Friday. It was Friday. And I said, look, if I got into SEO, what I'm trying to teach everybody right now is stay with a hyper local strategy. The problem with hyper local strategies is that it requires a level of execution, and it requires discipline and patience. When you jumped off that truck to become a solopreneur, now you have to eat. And you rather work 60 hours a week in the field doing 8 jobs a day because you had no strategy to begin with. You just jumped and you said, oh, if I just do it, the field of dreams mentality. If I just go out there, all my friends and family and everybody I know is going to refer me business and I'm going to be swimming in. The reality 3 months later is nobody is doing anything for you. And you need a hyper local strategy. If they were just, taking that little bit of money and focusing in on everything 5 miles from them for the next year, where you're doing Facebook ads, doing local ads. You can do I'm doing local ads right now on a 3-mile radius from me. And people will not believe this. I'm getting 14-cent clicks.
Wow.
When people are saying you have to spend $20. So there is ways to do it. You just gotta ask the right questions, and you gotta ask the right people. The problem is they're listening to everybody on Facebook saying, this sucks, that sucks. And basically everything sucks to these solopreneurs because they've tried it, but they've tried it wrong. They never sat down with somebody who's actually doing it and said, bro, how do you do this? Because that would require for me to invest 10 hours in you. Yes. In coaching, we're going to get into this. People say, I need a mentor. I said, how long have you been in business? I said, 6 months. I said, you don't need a mentor. You need a trainer. Because that's a whole lot of checking off a million boxes of things you don't know. You don't know finances. You don't know marketing. You don't know sales. You don't know prospecting. Prospecting alone, I can spend 2 months with you on a mindset and you still can't overcome prospecting because you hate talking to people.
Yes.
You have to overcome all these mindsets first. And then when I said, you don't need a mentor, I said, look, there's a difference between a mentor, a coach, and a trainer. Right now, you need a trainer. And the problem is you don't have the money to hire me on a weekly basis to go over. This is why I'm doing courses, because I can do courses at scale very cheaply. If you just take my course and you follow my training, I don't need to sit there and hold your hand. And the
Absolutely.
hand holding is where it gets expensive. Even if I charged you $100 an hour.
Yeah.
And you met with me only on a week basis, that's $400 a month for training. And then I got to give you the homework and how do you execute? Because we fail to look at these little simple things that seem so simple, and yet people misunderstand them, where if I give you tactics, you have to follow them in order, and it's part of a bigger picture. So when I say it's your GMB, it's your website, it's your little local ads, it's you're doing local ads, let's say on Nextdoor, and keeping it all local. And those are 5 different disciplines with 15 different moving parts. On top of that, you are frustrated because you got to go out and produce because your mortgage is due. You have all that pressure on you, and I get it. And then you just spent $5,000 on this truck and the equipment, and you just need to work, Frank. And so they feel like they're always underwater. They're like, that's the feeling that they're always drowning because they don't have strategy. They don't have the tactic. They can't afford it, and then, so I get it why when I talk to most consultants, they're really out of touch with this reality because they're dealing with $2 million companies, because that's where the money's at. You got to follow the money if you're a consultant. If you were, a business owner, you sold your business, you were a district manager, you understand the pest control business, you got to make 150, 200,000 a year to keep your lifestyle. You can't deal with micropreneurs, which is really what we are. And that's a whole term that people we're not even small business.
Right.
Because small business is like from here, according to the SBA, it's from here, to, I think 500 million or something like that. I mean, we're micropreneurs. We're tier 1. We're the 70, 80. If you look at the 80-20 rule, we're 80% of American small business under 4 employees.
Yes.
And we're all struggling with the same things. And yet everybody's listening to all these books on how these companies scaled up to 100 million. They forget that they had, $1 million in seed capital because they were a tech company. Service businesses don't have that. We're a totally different breed. And I find it when I'm talking to air conditioning guys, landscapers, whoever it is, the small business service have exactly the same problems, exactly the same challenges, and yet they're doing exactly the same stupid thing over and over.
And they're not building the relationships.
Right.
And it's finding those, what business owners don't realize is you have to build these relationships with these partners that begin to like, know, and trust you so that they can refer you out as well. And so they're skipping the networking, because why would I want to do networking? That's a waste of my time. I could be making X amount of dollars. But if you're out there networking, guess what? That's going to get your name out there just as quickly, as doing all of your marketing as well. Mm-hmm. It's just going to tenfold it.
Yeah. You really, when you talk to them, what I find is they're wanting to do everything, and yet they're doing very little of nothing, because it all becomes, I want to do it all. I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth.
Yes.
And every time that you want to do something, what people fail to understand is that there is a learning curve to all of it. And I would rather you focus on one, and everybody will say it's stupid because you're in the groups, everybody's going to give you their opinion. You keep your mouth shut about your opinion for a minute. Look, I just saw a brilliant strategy that was posted in a sales group. And this guy says, I only do one thing. I have a local coffee shop in my neighborhood. I sit there and I tell everybody that comes in looking like X to the coffee guy. It says, I give him $200. And I said, buy that guy my cup of coffee and tell him that I just bought him a cup of coffee. Does he want to sit with me?
Oh, I like that.
And everybody crapped all over it. It says, well, why wouldn't you just make your own coffee and put it outside on a table? I says, you guys are, you're so poverty stricken in mindset that guy is selling termite jobs at $2,000 to $3,000. The guy walks in, he sees the watch, and he says, "This guy has money. He obviously has a home. Buy him a cup of coffee."
Mhm.
And if he takes $200 in a day and he builds only one lead, that's $200 for that sale, for that lead, plus he made the lead, which is, if you try to do all of that in marketing, what people fail to understand is $150 to $250 cost to get one customer.
Yes.
They fail to understand those costs. And this is what is, and I will say that in every group, and I will get laughed out of a room.
Mhm.
Yet that is my reality.
Yeah, because business owners have to look at the cost versus the benefit. For that particular person, the cost of sitting there for an hour and having that coffee owner sell, a cup of coffee to all these people that have a watch and have an opportunity to talk to that person, that benefit could easily outweigh the costs of that 1 hour and that $200.
Yeah, think if you're selling solar. But the thing is, a lot of these guys are selling one service. They're selling $159 initials, $150. That's what I sell right now in a certain city because I have to compete.
Mhm.
Where in other cities, I'll sell that same service for $459.
Yeah,
You say that's unfair. That's unfair pricing. I said, no,
no,
because in that market, these people are demanding so high of a service, and they don't understand the psychology of pricing,
yes,
which they fail to understand that too, that if I price it at a certain price, they will think they're getting a higher level of service because of the USP that I'm providing. Where they're in this market down here, where I'm at, it's very, very low price market. But
yeah,
I'm only 3 miles from everybody, and it doesn't matter because there's no travel time. Those people I have to travel 45 minutes to.
yes,
And I realized that if you want my service, it's supply and demand. There's only 3 of us providing it in the market. I can pretty
yeah,
much demand whatever I want or go fish. I
yeah,
mean, it's no skin off my back. I can't worry about. So people don't understand that the psychology of the money mindset goes beyond there a lot of it. I just, one of the things that I'm battling with people that work for me, even my own employees, is I don't want to be rich. I just want to have enough to live a decent life. I said, you set the bar to here and you're always going to underperform,
mhm,
because what does that mean? I can't live unless I make, 6 figures.
yep,
And the money mindset is, no, why don't I strive to be better, be the best, so that I can make close to that, be in that top 10% market?
yes,
It's always the self-defeating. If I only need this much, and I forgot whose principle this is. I know you probably know it. If you set the bar here, you will always fall short. But if you set the bar up here, you will automatically raise that bar.
yes.
And I
I
forgot.
don't know who said, I don't remember who said that
It's a
either.
it's a principle, and I can't remember whose
Yeah,
principle it is. But you always have to. This is why I talk about setting BHAGs and setting these audacious goals. Because if I don't, I will only rise to this level 80% of it. So if
it's
I say,
probably a Pareto principle.
well, the Pareto principle is on the 80-20, but
Yep,
on the whole issue of raising your goals. In other words, I had set 5 big goals for this year. Okay, so I accomplished 3. I would have never accomplished those 3 if I hadn't set the bar so high, because I pushed myself.
yes,
Now, again, I'm competitive. I am the worst critic I have, because I will beat myself up over things, because I'm an overachiever that didn't have the benefit. I grew up single mom, dirt poor, cancer at 10, lived in welfare until I was 18. I couldn't go to an Ivy League school. I didn't have the grades. I wasn't stupid, but I had to tread water all my life just to make more,
yes,
because I had to prove myself, because I was always the underdog. And if I wanted to, I had to work twice as hard as everybody. When you have certain things, when you grew up in a household where kids I see today who are still 30 years old somehow, still living at home with mom because mom and dad provided everything and they have no idea what it's like to struggle.
Yes.
I make my
Absolutely.
kid struggle on purpose. He has to figure out how to get that garbage out. You know, he's 10.
Yeah.
You got to figure out how to solve that math problem. I'm not going to help you.
Absolutely.
I let him struggle because he has to understand that life is full of struggles.
It
That
is.
everything isn't like he has more toys than I ever had in my entire childhood. Yet he plays with 10% of those.
Right.
So I make him donate them.
Yeah.
You got to go in your closet, whatever you're not playing with, you have to donate. I mean, life, I don't make it. In other words, my kids don't struggle because they don't need to worry about eating, roof over their head, none of that. But I have to make them struggle to understand that you have to fight for what you want. It's just not going to, I'm not going to hand you the answers, the grades, this and that. You have to do the chores. You got to do things. Sorry, you couldn't play out at this time. That's life. That's being an adult. See, I'm preparing to become good adults. I don't want good children to impress my neighbors and my friends. Oh, look how well behaved they are. I could care less. I
Right.
want to raise good kids that are going to be productive. And in order to do that, I have to push them.
Absolutely.
My daughter is like, this is the difference between mindsets. And I'm starting to appreciate this because I know you get into a lot of this. And I know you have to quit because you got a meeting coming on, but I'll leave you with the last thought.
Yes.
My daughter is 14. She's going to be 15. She's an introvert. She's kind of, awkward. She doesn't like a lot. And she says, but she wants to get her license. 14. Most adults are 18, 20. They still want mom and dad to drive them around. She wants to
Yes.
get her
I have a
license.
niece like that.
She wants to get her car, but she knows she has to get a job. She wants to get a job. And then she tells me, I want to get a job at Publix. I'm like, but why don't you come work for me? You can make more money. He says, well, the reason I want to work at Publix is because I'm so introverted that I feel if I work with people, I can learn to be more outgoing. This
Of
is a
that.
14-year-old.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's
if
already challenging herself to step outside of her comfort zone.
my son will avoid everything that challenges him at all cost. It's just DNA. I have to work more on her being nice because she's kind of like blunt, cutthroat, to the point. I said, look, it's more important that you're nice. My son, he's nice to everybody. He's gullible, yet he doesn't have any drive. So 2 different challenges with 2 different kids. It's almost like coaching. It's the same thing I got to deal with owners. I know you got about 5 more minutes.
Yes.
Tell me, what else? What do we need to know? What do we need to do as small owners? Where do we start?
As small owners, start with understanding your numbers. Just get in there and start digging. What is important to me so that I can make decisions about hiring an employee. Do you have 1 service or do you have 3 services? If you have 3 services, then let's see where each of those services is making you money, because there may come a time where you want to release one of those services. How are you going to make that decision?
Right.
And if your financial statements aren't reflecting that information, that's the first step. Right. And get with your accountant, your bookkeeper, and start breaking some of those numbers down. Help them understand what your business is. If this is something you don't want to do, help them understand what you are doing. Because as it often says, garbage in, garbage out. If they're just dumping it in buckets that you don't understand, that's your first step. Right. Dig into your numbers and understand what is making up each of those numbers. And then have a consultation with your bookkeeper, have a consultation with your tax person, have a consultation with your coach or your mentor. And then always remember, there are services out there for free that can help you start to make those steps towards understanding your businesses. I was a mentor with SCORE for a while, and I supported the Small Business Development Center during COVID. So both of those are some free resources. If you cannot afford at this time to invest in a mentor or coach, grab one of those, and they can at least help get you directed in the right way so that you better understand your business.
No, I think that's awesome. By the way, I don't know who taught you how to do that you did with your background, where you have branding like literally everywhere, but you have your little logo over there, you have your name. The people don't understand the value of having that a QR code, because that QR code is being read. When I put this video up, YouTube is reading it, Google will be reading it, everybody will be reading it. You got it on your shirt. You know, if most guys would understand a lot of this about the branding, they would get so much better results on their social media and on their SEO. I teach a lot of this, especially the QR codes, how to use QR codes for SEO. How did you figure this out?
Canva.
Okay.
I just created it in Canva. I went on Canva. You can create QR codes there. And
how did you figure out to use a QR code?
My business coach is always saying, use QR codes for everything. It will drive to your email list. Mine drives to a free consultation with me.
Right.
But there's a lot of ways that you can use those QR codes. You know, she comes from the education background. So every time she does a keynote, she's got QR codes going to her resources, QR codes to groups that she has. So that's how I learn.
And people don't realize they just got a free marketing class.
Yes.
Also, yeah, no, cool. Michele, thank you so much. The event, just to close off with that, is next week in Michigan.
It is not.
Oh, it's not. I'm having them on next week, and you'll be on next week.
Yes. Okay. I'll be on next week, but the actual event is taking place April 27th and 28th in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
All right. And how do they sign up for this?
It's on Eventbrite, and it's under Lead People Manage Stuff, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Excellent. Sweet. Thank you so much for being on. This video will be out tomorrow. Your course will be up tomorrow. Any information I can post on that event, it's going to be awesome. Forward it to me. We'll get it out there. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Franklin.
Have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye.